No one remembered when the mirrors first appeared. Some whispered they were relics of the ancient mages, forged in a time when magic was as common as air. Others swore they were the last creation of Avalon's high priestess, crafted just before the island vanished into the mists of legend. The only thing everyone agreed on was this: each mirror reflected more than just a face. It reflected an entire world. Mara Callen was a historian. She dealt in facts, in pottery shards, and eroded stone, not in folklore. Legends were for storytellers, not scholars of lost civilizations, but belief is a fragile thing. When her mentor, the brilliant Professor Alaric Thorne, vanished while investigating the ancient ruins beneath Glastonbury Tor, Mara's world of facts began to crumble. All he left behind was a tattered fragment of his diary. On it, scrawled in what looked disturbingly like dried blood, were 7 chilling words: "Mirrors are doors. Do not look." Compelled by a loyalty that defied logic, Mara traveled to the excavation site. Even from a distance, the air above the Tor seemed to vibrate, shimmering with an unseen energy, as if the very fabric of reality was stretched thin. Deep beneath the hill, in a circular chamber carved from pure black stone, she found them, 7 mirrors, standing like silent, ancient sentinels. Each was framed in a different, unique material, one of shimmering gold, another of polished obsidian, then silver, copper, glass, bone. And the 7th, the last one, was framed in something that seemed unsettlingly alive. She approached the first mirror, the one framed in gold. It reflected her perfectly. A little too perfectly. As she watched, her reflection's eyes flickered with an intelligence that wasn't her own, a subtle, predatory gleam. She stepped back, unnerved, and moved to the obsidian mirror. This one showed her image wreathed in roaring flames, a silent, terrifying inferno. The third, framed in pure silver, was even stranger. Her reflection stood drenched, as if caught in a perpetual, sorrowful downpour. Though the air in the chamber was bone dry, her heart hammered against her ribs. The 4th mirror, framed in copper, was a void. It showed absolutely nothing, just the flat, dead emptiness where her reflection should have been. As she neared the 5th, the glass one, a faint sound reached her ears. A whisper, like wind through a keyhole, shaping her name. Mara. The 6th, framed in bleached bone, didn't reflect light so much as it pulsed with its own faint, rhythmic, sickly glow. Then there was the 7th, the living one. The frame seemed to writhe, and it pulsed in time with her own frantic heartbeat. As she drew closer, she could have sworn it breathed, a slow, deep inhale and exhale. Every instinct, every rational thought screamed at her to run, to leave this accursed place and never look back. Instead, she reached out her hand. She touched it. The world shattered. She wasn't falling, but being pulled, unraveling into pure darkness. She landed, not with a thud, but with a soft settling, in a version of Avalon that belonged only to myth. The sky above was illuminated by 2 impossible moons, and the very air sang with forgotten, powerful spells. In the distance, a breathtaking city rose towards the twin moons, a metropolis made entirely of mirrors. Every wall, every tower, reflected the alien starscape, but none of the constellations were familiar. People glided through the streets, but their faces were unnervingly blank, their expressions vacant. As they passed, they turned their heads in unison, and their eyes gleamed like polished glass. They were beautiful, and they were terrifying. Mara Callen. The voice echoed from behind her, familiar and yet hollowed out. She spun around. It was Alaric. But he was older, his face etched with lines of despair, his eyes sunken and haunted. "You shouldn't have come. You disappeared," she stammered, trembling uncontrollably. "I came to find you. What is this place?" He let out a dry, rattling whisper. "I didn't disappear, Mara. I was taken by my own reflection." The horrifying truth unspooled like smoke from a dying fire. Each of the 7 mirrors was a doorway, a gateway to a reality where a version of herself had walked a different path. In the world of the Golden Mirror, she was a powerful, ruthless queen. In the Obsidian Mirror's world, a deadly assassin. The Silver Mirror held a Mara who was a revered saint, and the Bone Mirror, a corpse. These reflections weren't just echoes, they had grown sentient. They had grown hungry for real existence, for flesh and blood. Each one ached to cross over, to shatter their original and take their place in the real world. The mirrors are merging, Alaric explained, his voice ragged. The barriers between worlds weaken with every glance, every touch. Soon, there will be no difference between reflection and reality. All will become one. He led her through the silent, watching crowds to a grand temple at the heart of the city. He called it the Mirror of Origin. It wasn't a mirror at all, but a gateway of absolute consuming darkness. As Mara gazed into its depths, she saw herself, her own face, multiplied into infinity. Each reflection, stretching into the void, whispered the same seductive word, stay. She finally understood. The reflections, these half-formed beings, needed an anchor, a receptacle, someone real enough to bridge their worlds and ours. And she, as the last person to awaken the mirrors, was the perfect conduit. Alaric, seeing the dawning horror on her face, raised a shard of a broken mirror, intending to shatter the origin, but it was too late. The mirrored people, the reflections, closed in. They didn't attack, they simply copied. They mirrored his every movement, every breath, until the space was filled with a dizzying dance of identical forms, making it impossible to tell who was the real Alaric and who was the copy. Mara felt reality itself begin to fracture. The twin moons shattered in the sky. The air turned to solid glass. In a final, desperate moment of lucidity, she remembered the diary fragment. She grabbed the sharp shard of Alaric's broken mirror from the floor and, without a second thought, plunged it deep into her own chest. The pain wasn't physical. It was cosmic, a tearing of her very soul. Across the temple, her infinite reflection screamed as one. The mirrored city cracked like ice, the structures imploding, each one swallowing its own stolen light. When Mara opened her eyes, she was back on the cold stone floor beneath Glastonbury Tor. The mirrors were gone, all of them. Only the seventh frame remained, the living one, now inert and empty. She staggered to her feet and caught a glimpse of herself in a dusty puddle on the floor. Her reflection smiled faintly and then held its expression perfectly still, even as she turned away. Days later, archaeologists officially sealed the chamber, classifying it as structurally unsound, too dangerous to enter. The story of the Seven Mirrors was relegated to local legend, a footnote in a dusty academic journal. But the story doesn't end there. Sometimes, late at night, when a tourist stares a little too long at their reflection in a shop window near the Tor, they see it flicker just for a second. And in a quiet, dimly lit corner of a museum, a curator working late has sworn she's heard a whisper coming from behind an ancient display case. It sounds just like her own voice, soft and impossibly distant, saying, "There are still 6 left. Thank you so much for journeying into the shadows with me today." If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next descent into the unknown. Until next time, be careful what you see in the mirror.